Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listener. This is Brett. I'm the producer of the Online Great Books podcast. Welcome back. Today, Scott and Karl continue their discussion of Walker Percy's Lost in the Cosmos. And we pick up right where we left off. There is no overlap between these two parts. As this second half of the conversation begins, Karl will be talking about boredom, and then they move pretty quickly into Scott talking about how the book smells, and it just gets better from there. Also, please remember, if you love the Online Great Books podcast, leave a review. There are numerous places you can do this beyond iTunes. In fact, whatever you use to catch your pods, there's at least a way to give a rating. But there's a lot of people out there who just don't get it. They just don't get things, right? And that doesn't stop them from publicly commenting on the things they just don't get. And podcast reviewing is not, immune from this problem. So if you are getting a lot of value out of the podcast, go, please, take a couple minutes and counterbalance the ramblings of these people who just don't get it when it comes to Online Great Books. I know Scott and Karl appreciate it. They mention it at the end of this conversation. So that's it. Enjoy the rest of this discussion of Lost in the Cosmos. Thank you for your time, and here we go.
Maybe I ought to skip to the middle. The bored self. Boredom is a really interesting philosophical notion to me. It's connected with that fashion thing. For me, boredom is good things becoming bad without changing.
Mm-hmm.
You're bored with your wife. Well, what happened? Did she change? Did she get worse? Did you change? Probably you changed. Or you're bored with your car. Is it no longer good? Does it no longer do what cars do? I've had it 2 years. I need to lease a new one.
Yeah, all these questions are designed to point out the problem of human imperfection or fallenness or whatever. He's doing the good work here. It's just, I don't know. And this thing smelled like all these sort of like smug mid-century, 20th century books, Just drove me nuts, Karl. I'm like, what is Karl doing to me?
Torturing you. I like all the books you make me read.
I do. You do?
As far as you know.
I don't dislike this. I'm just not his audience, man.
All right, I want to try to target us because I want to get to the two space odysseys at the end.
Yes.
Because I love them. But he has this line about boredom. Under the circumstances in which a man gets bored, a dog goes to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
This is something for you to think about. And then he makes the point, let's say you take a tour of the Parthenon in Greece. And, it's boring. It's a tour. Now imagine under what set of circumstances a viewing of the Parthenon would not be a bore. For example, you're a NATO colonel defending Greece against a Soviet assault. You're in a bunker in downtown Athens, binoculars propped up on sandbags. It is dawn. A medium-range missile attack is underway. 500,000 Greeks are dead. 2 missiles bracket the Parthenon. The next will surely be a hit. Between columns of smoke, a ray of golden light catches the portico. Are you bored? Can you see the Parthenon? I bet you can. It's like Churchill saying nothing makes a day better than to be shot at with no effect.
Right.
At least somebody cares. Some talk about depression. Now we get to the middle section. Percy knew about depression. Probably both parents killed themselves.
Yeah.
And an uncle. So something's off in the Percy family. In section 11, you could read his cure for suicide, which might be interesting. And his cure for depression is suicide, not actually doing it, but not doing it. And then you realize that you don't have to be alive. And that when you are, it becomes a grace rather than just something that you are. Anyway, you could read that on your own.
That's actually one of the most compelling chunks of the book for me was that argument.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll read a little bit more then. The ex-suicide The ex-suicide is one who thinks about it but doesn't do it. He opens his front door, sits down on the steps, and laughs. Since he has the option of being dead, he has nothing to lose by being alive. It is good to be alive. He goes to work because he doesn't have to. Presumably, that's what he did.
Mm-hmm. I wrote in the margin here that suicide rates are worse now, and they are. It's maybe the highest it's ever been in North America. Number of people killing themselves. I know that these problems he points at are real. I have conversations with friends that struggle with this stuff. The numbers are there. These people are taking their own lives. I don't want to be unempathetic, but I keep saying, but I just can't understand it. I just don't have this experience. I've lost pets and loved ones and had the flu and, so there's all kinds of stuff I can empathize with.
Mm-hmm.
By extension, well, I've had the flu. Okay, you're on chemotherapy. That has to be way worse than when I had the flu. Blah blah blah. Right? I can kind of get there with people, but this stuff here, it's just.
I bet among our listeners there are a substantial portion that
don't kill yourself, listener. Don't. Is that what you're saying?
No, don't do that. But that's not it. What I mean is, okay. I bet there's a substantial portion of the sorts of people that listen to our show. They're going to be with me and are going to get it.
I have no doubt. That's true.
Yeah,
I have no doubt.
For whom a book like this or his novels might be helpful in getting yourself placed a little bit better. In the middle, he has a semiotic primer of the self, which he tells you don't need to read, but you do. And I just want to sketch it out real briefly. The problem with the self in the way that language works is that you can't get a signifier or a referent that points back to the self. The self is the one that is doing language. It's not the one that language is about.
Right.
The self is the one talking. So he does the Helen Keller example. So Miss Sullivan spells out water in her hand. That refers to the liquid, but not to the actual liquid, but also to the concept of the liquid. And that you cannot come with a symbol. You can't come up with a signifier that refers back to the self. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Do we believe the Helen Keller story, Karl?
I don't know. I thought you'd bring that up.
If for the purposes of argument, that's fine.
Some people have been poking holes at her. It's an example also of the weirdness of human beings. We're the only creatures that we have ever found that talk.
Yeah.
The monkeys don't do it. The monkeys that learn sign language, they're not doing it.
No.
They're learning signals. You hold up the thing for banana and they look for a banana.
Yeah.
Whereas you go up to a human being and you say banana, and he says, what about it? You can't stop children from getting language. And it takes a lot of bananas to get a chimpanzee to sort of learn a few signs. It's not really language.
Yeah.
Nothing against our animal friends, but they just don't do it. And probably the problems of the self are connected with language. They can't even talk about a self because they don't talk.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is talking about the self. We talk about the ancient Greeks. You could start to see it. I was thinking about Achilles. Well, I was thinking about Achilles and Odysseus. They both have self problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Odysseus is always acting.
Yeah.
And Achilles he's part divine, but not enough divine. And so he wants to be divine, but can't be. And he can't be what he is. Yeah, and Ajax, I remember Ajax says, why don't you take the money and go fight? It's all over a girl. You're being stupid. And Achilles won't do it. He can't place himself in that box as being just another fighter like Ajax.
He has a choice in front of him from the very beginning. His mom says, well, you can be immortal or you can go back and farm and nobody will know who you are.
He can't be immortal, but he can be remembered forever or he can be forgotten and live a long life.
Yeah, he's immortal in that. That's what I meant. Yeah. Yeah, he can be legendary, or he can go back and farm. He has the choice in front of him. So he has to figure out what he's going to do and which way, Western man.
So all the stuff about language is, I think, really important. That we are language users means that he uses some German philosophy here. For the sign user, a world is imposed upon the cosmos, to which he still responds like any other organism. So the cosmos would be, think of it as the physical world. The world, the Welt, the Umwelt, it's what all of this stuff means. You are, in a sense, you're a physical creature like every other. But you also have myths and stories and meanings to your life, and it's really weird.
Yeah. I choose to just hold that it is.
Well, so now the speculation here. All right. So I'm trying to give us direction on this.
Well, more on this. I can't let you. So I'm reading the Joel Salatin book right now that we'll be talking about here in a couple of weeks. And he was talking about caring for these animals. And he says, you have an obligation to do the best you can. You're depending on them and they are depending on you and whatever. And then he says, the cows don't know that you could do better. He says they don't know that the grazing could be better or that their situation's less than it could be or that all they know is what's right there at that moment. And maybe they don't even know that, but they're in that moment entirely, always. So it's up to the husbandman to provide them with all that it could be. They can't do it. They're not even aware that it could be better.
I would say that's part of being the sort of creature that can use language and think. You can see the cosmos around you, the physical environment of your farm, but you can also see what it could be.
Yeah.
Because you have a world which has meaning, which might not be actually physical.
Does Percy see that ability as a gift or a curse?
Well, it's a gift, but it's got as he says, it is an Eden which harbors its own semiotic snake in the grass.
Right.
If we were just going to put it in evolutionary terms and say, well, the human's got this really big brain that makes it so that childbirth is often deadly for women in the wild. It's very weird to put it in terms of evolution. Why do we have such a huge head? How much brain do you need to be able to roam the plains and gather food and fling poo? So the human brain, the intellect that we have, is much more than we need for survival.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe in the Ice Ages, it was the ones that were the smartest that managed to survive.
Right.
Because they could problem solve and all of that. All right, fine. So you can problem solve now, and you can figure out where to put the fence on your farm, but you can also sit up at night, trying to, drinking yourself into oblivion because you can't place yourself comfortably in your world. You can be depressed. You can be suicidal. Thanks, evolution.
A disorder or deficiency of the essential of the type of man.
Yeah, I quote this all the time. As much as I don't like Kant, I quote him all the time. But he says, if reason was designed to lead to happiness, nature has come across a most unfortunate arrangement. And then I think he talks about dogs. The dog is much happier than you are.
Sure.
So, blessing, yes. Curse, yes.
Yeah.
Does it have to be a curse?
This is a particular kind of book, and it's not a book about the blessings of, humanness. That's not what it's about. So, to look to Percy and expect that in this book, it's the wrong book.
So, can I give direction now?
Yeah, sure.
So he's ending this section in the middle on semiotics, which is sign using, symbol using. He says, let's see, if the sign user first enters into an Edenic state by virtue of his discovery and constitution of the world by signs, it's his theory that, kids get super happy when they start to use language, just like Helen Keller did, and, everything. What's that? In the Bible, it's the story of Adam naming everything, which poetically at least talks about the truth of this. But he says he says it's an Eden which harbors its own semiotic snake in the grass. There's no signified to which a signifier can be joined to make a sign. The self has no sign of itself. No signifier applies. All signifiers apply equally. He says, I am rascal, hero, craven, brave, treacherous, loyal, at once the secret hero and asshole of the cosmos. You find out that in the Eden story, it's when they had to put the clothes on, which either you take as literal or poetic. He says, the self perceives itself as naked. Every self is ashamed of itself. And you, Scott, would say probably, not me, buddy.
I was talking to my children the other day. My children are old now. I don't know that they're children. They're 17 and 19 we were talking about.
Yeah, they're pretty much done.
They're pretty much done. Well, I told them that, at some point you end up having a private life. In very small children have a private life. They have their own thoughts and wants and wishes and fears and whatever. They have their own whatever. But at some point, it becomes, maybe the private life becomes bigger, maybe. I don't know. Like, not to minimize children's inner monologue and whatever. But I was telling them that it's okay for them to have a private life and that not everyone has to know everything. I've been married for longer than I haven't been. And I don't keep secrets from my wife, but she's also not privy to my every thought. And that's okay. I'm not withholding anything damaging, but she needs not know every single thing that occurs to me. I have a private life. And I think for some people, that is disconcerting for them. To understand that you have a private life is ultimately to understand in that you are alone. I am in charge of the finances of the Hamburg household. I am on a fixed income. Boomers. I don't intend to make any more money than I've already made. We've got enough, and if we're careful and prudent, we can cruise it out. And I have fears about that. There are pitfalls that I need to avoid, and there are things I need to do to make sure that all goes okay. My wife doesn't need to know about any of those things. That's private, and that's for me to deal with. That's an example, the best example I can give people right now, and still have a private life. But that causes problems for people. I don't think we want to have a private life, because when you're in your private life, you are alone. And that is right to be that way in that time. Now, somehow, when we're at our best, that private life is probably tantamount or closely aligned to or parallel to a prayer life. Mm-hmm. And at that point, maybe you aren't entirely alone. But there is a point when you start to realize you have that and it is right for you to have it, and then the spiritual chunk hasn't caught up. And there you are. Why did I say all that? I don't even remember why I brought that up.
So the private life, I'm going to translate into the self. However it happens, it's something that language users can have and that non-language users don't have. And I know you hate this word. It is problematic. The way you defined yourself, you not define yourself. The way you talked about your private life was in terms of tasks that you had to do. Jobs that you have to do, responsibilities that you have. So there's a mode of self-placement there, that you are the one who handles the finances. You are the one that plans out the homestead. You are the one that does this and that. That you have things that are yours to do. So you're thinking of yourself as provider or as, I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine.
The decider. I don't know. That's something that needs to be done, and that's where things can go wrong. Percy talks about traditional modes of placement, totemistic, I'm a parakeet, I'm a bulldog, pantheism, I am God. All of these are kind of a problem because, in fact, you're not God. There's the old-fashioned Christian one. That would be diagram 12. I am a self with you under God. That would be the Kierkegaardian thing. It's a self in relationship to the one that made it. There's the immanent self. That's probably what a lot of people do, which is the consumer. You define yourself. Gosh, the people that post videos of themselves crying watching the trailers for the next Star Wars movie. Crying with tears of joy to see Rey, the Mary Jane, just consuming the next thing, or caring about what celebrities do, or jumping on the next political outrage. The self sees itself as an immanent being in the world, existing in a mode of being. You're just immersed in all of that stuff by passive consumership. Then there's the one that pisses me off. It's the transcendent self. And you've known people like this.
You mean like Carl Sagan?
Yeah, where you exceed everybody else and you treat everyone else as an object, and you're the only self in the universe. And you get that way because you know the real story. You're the Gnostic. You're the Degrassi Tyson with the secret knowledge that Pluto's not really a planet. Actually, you've read a psychology book. And so, you go to the party and you're secretly analyzing everybody. Except yourself.
They don't think it be like it is, but it do.
The scientists are typically, gosh, this might sound familiar to you now, right? Trust the science. The scientists who transcend all of us by their secret knowledge of the peer-reviewed journal articles that only they can properly read, that none of us poor fools can read. It's not just a power trip. That's their self-identity, is to be the ones that are smarter than you.
Mm-hmm. They've been told that, They took the MCAT and got selected.
They're the princes of the age.
Yeah,
He says,
whatever.
But then you get reentry problems because you can't stay transcendent all the time. With the waning of transcendence, reentry problems increase. One manifestation which always amazes laymen is the jealousy and lack of scruple of scientists. Their anxiety to receive credit often seems more appropriate to used car salesmen than to a transcending community. It's absolutely true. Just go to some conferences and you'll see it. There's no more hateful glares than at the dinner speech, the keynote speech. But you can understand this they're trying to figure out who they are too, and the way that they figure it out is they're better than you. If you're a scientist, if you're an artist, you can do it. If you're a politician, you can do this. There are ways up out of the common mass to establish yourself as, I'm the special one because I'm above you.
I used to give quite a few trade talks. Be invited to speak somewhere about what I used to do for a living. And people show up there to hear you talk. And sometimes I got picked because they couldn't find anybody else. I know. It's fine. I'm not, I don't know, Tony Robbins and people pay huge money or whatever. But, I'd get paid sometimes and people would come and get continuing education credits for their, whatever professional initial thing they had after their name. And I go and talk, and there might be 50 people there. There might be 200, something like that. And in that time that I would give that speech, all those people would be looking at me and listening to what I had to say about that. And for that time, right, wrong, or whatever, I was the authority and the dominant person in that room at that time. Mm-hmm. Everybody got quiet. They dimmed the lights. The lights were only on me, and I had a microphone. Nobody else did, and I spoke and whatever. And I don't want to say, well, I don't think that would go to my head or anything. But then you say, thank you so much for having me speak. If you have any questions, I'll be in the lobby, and you have a good day. And that's the end of the speech, and you go out there. And then a few people show up, and they ask some questions, and then they leave. And now you're not that guy now.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not that guy now. And which is a relief to me. At that moment, I would be just completely exhausted. I would be okay. And then the last guy that had a question or whatever leaves, and then suddenly I would just need to go to bed, just exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And I often would. and then when you wake up, or when I would wake up, or maybe I go get something to eat and a cup of coffee, and then be okay again. But it is jarring to go from a role like that to not that.
Yeah, so that would be the reentry problems that he talks about.
Yeah.
This is why only good poets kill themselves. The bad poets just stick around.
Right. Nobody reads it. They never have that problem.
But we make fun of on our other show, don't date musicians. We're not reliable.
Mm.
We have reentry problems. Gosh, should you manage to really play music well or compose something wonderful, and you've touched the divine for that moment, how do you come back down? You've transcended everybody, and maybe you're not mean about it. It's just, look, what do you do after you write the Fifth Symphony?
No, you're not mean about it. It's just you're not the same for a while.
But you might go to the opium den.
Isn't this really a problem with modernity? If there weren't specialists, if everybody's a hunter and gatherer, we all live inside Dunbar's number. There's 100 people that we know and who know us. Like, do you ever have the reentry problem? Probably not. You never exit.
Right. Well, whatever you are, you'd be it. If you're the shaman, you're always going to be it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of these are problems of modernity, problems of prosperity, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we want to pay you and fly you out, and then you'll talk to our people about, whatever. And I would go out there and do that. And then that's over. Well, I should never have been there.
Yeah. But we have a conference. We have to have a speaker.
Oh, dude, did you see the Record Center warehouse fire in, probably not. There's this company called Access that runs like these document storage records management facilities like what I had. And they had one that was devoted strictly to TD Ameritrade. TD Ameritrade gets a notice that they're going to be under SEC investigation. Burned to the ground this weekend.
Oops. Interesting.
Sprinklers failed, Karl.
That's amazing. That's fortunate for them, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find the discussion of reentry in this book pretty good, pretty compelling to me, especially the talk about, why poets and musicians have so much trouble and scientists don't. Well, scientists are the princes of the age. They don't fall that far when they fall out of their transcendence. When our current medical folks, when they get done speaking, they're still transcending.
Yeah, they never take the lab coat off.
Right. Pick your favorite musician. The really good ones seem to have a hard time coming back down. And I was thinking about this, and one of my favorite bands is Rush, and I don't think they ever had those problems. and I was thinking that you would probably respond, well, they aren't that good.
No, they're really great at what they do. I just don't want to hear that guy's voice. They're really great at what they do. If they didn't have those problems, I would say it's because they're on the spectrum so much that they never drop out of that headspace.
They were one of the more intellectual bands. They would joke that it wasn't sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was sex, books. No, it was books, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah, they're pretty spurgy. Spurg rock is what I took.
Yeah, I've been listening to their live albums, enjoying some old Rush, Xanadu and Jacob's Ladder. Some good stuff.
I think I told you this. Maybe I didn't. Charity was listening to some Rush the other day and in training, and I came in here and I didn't know what it was. I thought maybe it was like a Yes album I hadn't heard. Like, I didn't hate it. And come to find out it was a newer Rush album, and the singer had lost a step or two. And I'm like, it took the edge off of it. I'm like, I can listen to this. It's the guy's voice, Karl. It's just, I can't.
Yeah, it's a little shrill. The last 2 or 3 albums, I think, are really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think we listened to the whole album. I can't remember which one it was. I wrote it down. I enjoyed it.
So where are we? We've got the self, which is a problem to the self because it can't define itself using the tool of language, which is what makes it a self. And so we have all of these ways to put yourself in a world, and they're entertaining to me. I think you lost it a little bit around question 13.
Which one's that one?
Oh, that's the corn dance in Taos, New Mexico, which I've been to. And it's just an examination of all the characters that go to this to see the Native American, to see the old Indian dancers do their stuff and how they're watching it. And
yeah, I texted Karl and said, I can't read any more of this.
Yeah, I figured you were done at that point. But just I don't know. I find it really good. But I want to go to the end. Let's go to the end. There are 2 space odysseys at the end. Just like in Lost in the Cosmos. Lost in the Cosmos ends with Carl Sagan, riding on this imaginary spaceship. For me as a kid, it was, I don't know, I really liked it. But, there are things that you see as a kid that don't do you any good. So let's go to 19, The Self Marooned in the Cosmos. So it's a story about the future. It's 2050. The world's in trouble. And so we send a Bussard ramjet spaceship to the nearest place we can find that has a planet, and it's Proxima Centauri. And the astronauts get there, and they're trying to land at the planet, but it finally dawned on the crew they're being held in orbit. The aliens don't want them to land. And so they work out a language. The aliens are asking, what's your C type?
Yeah. What?
What are you talking about? Let us land. What is your C type? And what they mean is, are you having problems? Are you, let's see, C1 is a first order consciousness, which is just, unfallen. And then C2s are the fallen type that haven't gotten help, and C3s are the fallen type that have gotten help. And the aliens want to know, they want to know, what's your metaphysical status? And the humans are like, let us land. We need help. And the aliens say, well, tell us, why did you leave? How are things going on Earth? Well, we really haven't heard anything from them since we left. Yes, there was a war. How are you doing on your ship? Well, we had started with 12. And among the 9 survivors, we're doing okay. What happened to the other 3? Well, they were killed in fights over the women. So it's turned out, let's see, the captain, the commander, he's out of it, flaked out. He sniffs coke and reads Ron McEwen and Richard Bach. He's not functioning. We need to land. Request permission.
Did you ever read any Richard Bach?
No, I haven't.
I have. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Yeah. It could only have been written in the 70s. It's ridiculous.
The executive officer is screwing his brains out. I'm too busy flying the ship. Request landing. And the aliens say, no, your species is in trouble. You don't even know whether you have a civilization. And so the aliens, figure out help was not requested and has not arrived. And the guy says, well, all those religions were just a bunch of crap. Any other immediate troubles? My 2 women are fighting. Both are thought to be culturally liberated and were so certified by the screening procedure, but one is reverted to the old monogamy and wants the captain to marry us. The other one wants to screw the captain and me at the same time and also run the ship. And then you hear over the microphone the alien says, my God, we need these people get them out of here. And so they get turned away. Well, and so the question would be, what do you think? Are you a C1, a C2, a C3? I think the question's less important than the story, frankly. Which is this idea that humans might be really messed up. And some of the Space Marine stories I've been reading recently are like that the humans make it out into the galaxy and it's really bad for the galaxy. It's not. Maybe we're not the good guys.
Yeah, I said earlier in the show that the Voyager thing, we should never have even done it. Should never even had the camera out there.
I don't know. I like the Jupiter pictures.
What does that do for us, though? It's a parlor trick.
It's pretty. Beauty is its own justification. It's weird for people who don't think there's anything really to talk about to try to talk to the aliens.
Yeah, that's one of the things about the small talk. Like most people don't actually think that there's anything really to talk about. Maybe they want to talk about the bears or whatever. And some of them do it because they're nervous. Some of them do it because it's safe. But a great number of them really don't have a hierarchy of things to talk about in their mind. And that's not to say that they're dumb. It's just everything's the same now.
Yeah, I find the sports talk really depressing. Why is this even something that you care about?
Yeah. Sports should be played.
All sports should be local.
Yeah.
Should have a manhood stone in your yard, and if somebody's visiting and he can pick it up, he gets a beer and a feather for his cap.
Yeah.
I think that's the way it should be. I want to do the second Space Odyssey, which is my favorite. It reminds me of Heinlein and Canticle for Leibowitz. And I don't know how much of it to tell you. I think maybe you should go read it. Same kind of a story.
Same crew, I think.
Similar crew.
They got turned away, and the way I read it, they got turned away because they were C2s. I'm like, well, I guess we'll just go back. And they headed back to Earth.
It could be the same one, except that the captain hasn't gone bad.
Well, true.
I don't know. There's some interesting character sketches. There's Marcus Aurelius Schuyler, who's the captain. He's like Dean Martin in one of the airplane movies. Well, they go off, and they find out that there was no signal. There was nothing out there.
Okay,
they have
that's right.
the crew is they've decided that there's going to be 1 man, 3 women.
Yeah, that's right. It is a different crew. I read this like in the middle of the night, like taking medicine.
Yeah, after you texted me, said, I'm done with this. What should I read? I was like, well, at least read the last bits. And you have Tiffany and Kimberly and Jane. Gosh, I can't give you all the details. Dear listener, you're just going to have to read it. It's funny. Tiffany and Kimberly are very happy to just live in this polygamous, kind of modernist, sexually liberated crew. Jane has some problems. Jane is an old-time Methodist.
Mm-hmm.
Claims that she was over that, but she wasn't really. And when they've been out in space long enough that her husband must be dead, she had a husband. She wants to marry the captain. Well, anyway, all right. I would get to the good stuff. Okay, so they make it back home. And it turns out there's been a war. And there's almost nothing left. And they meet a couple of groups of people, and they have some options. Before I get to that, I want to get to the names of the kids on this ship. The names of the first 7 children were Krishna, Vishnu, Indira out of Kimberly, Anna Freud, Opie, Irene Curry out of Tiffany, and John out of Jane Smith.
Out of. Like horses.
Well, or biblically, like Jacob's wives. So they make it home, and they have a few more kids, Carl Jung, Siddhartha, Chomsky, Sarah and Marianne out of Dr. Jane Smith. And so they meet Abbott Leibowitz and Aristarchus Jones, which if you read Canticle for Leibowitz with us, that's who they are. And so we have 2 proposals of what to do. So the whole human race, well, nobody's having any babies because of the radiation. So what are you going to do about it? And so there's a couple old monks with the abbot, and then there's the Californian scientist. And he says, here's my proposal. Let's go colonize Europa. We can grow some food there. We will create, with a bit of luck, we can colonize Europa in the same way as Europe colonized the New World, except that, and here's the exciting part, there's no reason why we cannot develop a society such as the one my namesake lived on in ancient Ionia, a society based on reason and science, and do so without repeating the mistakes of the past. For example, the Dark Ages, 2,000 years of Plato and Judaism and Christianity, a sexually free and peace-loving society where the sciences and arts can flourish, freed from the superstitions and repressions of religion. This is his plan. It's going to be Enlightenment paradise. We're going to go live on this moon of Jupiter in a cave, and it'll be great.
That's never been tried before.
The abbot says, are the children invited? Well, the space children are. It would make no sense to perpetuate genetic defects. I see. All right. So that's your first plan. So, dear listener, you want to think about this. This is your plan. Earth has been mostly destroyed. Their fertility is 1% or lower. It'll be great. We'll go off to Europa and it'll be great. And then Abbot Leibowitz's proposal is different. So he says, I'm not sure how to sum this up. So what he wants to do is we're going to go to Lost Cove, because your ship can take us there. We're going to go to Lost Cove, Tennessee, which I think will be okay. And he says, as far as I know, I may very well be the Pope. That is to say, as an abbot, I have the episcopal power of consecrating priests, and if there are no bishops left and no pope left, guess who that leaves? As abbot, I'm in the apostolic succession, the direct line of laying on hands that goes back to Christ himself. So his point, so I'm going to go to here, maybe I'll be able to ordain somebody to carry on after me so the church survives. The only ones that I know are your boys, Krishna, Vishnu, Siddhartha, Opie, Carl Jung, Chomsky, and John. I love those names.
So terrible.
He says he's got a different view of he thinks he has a divine call. He says it's my obligation to remain because the church will survive to the end of earth time and until Christ himself comes. And if so, I'm the head of the church. I have to stay. So I'll take you there. I will marry you and Jane. Your marriage in space by yourself is canonically suspect, to say the least. And I'll baptize kids in Lost Cove Creek. So you can go with Aristarchus Jones, but what if I say is not true? You're like the Gentiles Paul spoke of, a stranger to every covenant with no promise to hope for, with the world about you and no God. You're stuck with yourselves, ghost selves, which will never become selves. You're stuck with each other. You'll never know how to love each other. Even if you succeed, you and your progeny will go to Europa and roam the galaxy, lost in the cosmos forever. All right, these are your two options. Which one do you take? So the second option seems, the first one sounds good, right? It's technologically adept and all your needs will be provided for you. It's a science fiction-y future. You'll get to keep Kimberly and Tiffany and Jane, although she won't be very happy about it. It'll be great. Or you can go be a dirt farmer in Lost Cove.
Right.
Well, we get to see what happens. You can think about it. So
take the potato pill.
Take the potato pill, yeah. So they show you the captain's now 65 years old. He's living in that cave in Europa. It looks like they're managing to feed themselves. The colonies operated on the principles of Skinner's Walden 2, modified by Jungian self-analysis, with suitable rewards for friendly social behavior and punishment, even exile for aggressive, jealous, hostile, solitary, mystical, or other antisocial behavior. Daily Diwalis from the Hindu are held in a kind of kiva where a dried lichen remarkably like Earth's fructicose or chelai is smoked, inducing a mild euphoria. So this is your life.
Sounds like hell. A Skinnerian behavioralist society.
Well, but you've got lots of sharing of your feelings, lots of meetings. They're not very happy. Dr. Jane is sulking in her cave. The captain is reading Henry IV again. But he's got all the women he wants, I guess.
Yeah.
But there you go. So that's your first option. All right. Or the second option, you go to Tennessee with Abbot Leibowitz. You settle down in the mountain valley. You grow wild maize, collards, trap rabbits, wild pigs, and quail. You're 65. Turns out there's a few other survivors. There's even some Catholics and Protestants and Jews around. And so you're sitting up there on your porch. Dr. Jane says, why don't you come to Mass? And you say, my cathedral's the blue sky, my communion's with my good friends. She says, bull. She goes down to church. And you're sitting there watching your sons serve Mass. Some of your sons. One of the monks has gone back with the Baptists. But there you are. I don't know, is anything better? Some of the hill people are conspiring against some of the other ones, It's the same old stuff. And it ends. The captain rises creakily, takes a pull of the golden liquor. I got to get back to the cabin, he says to no one in particular. Jane will be looking for me. I got a pig in my smoker. I use pecan for smoking. Beats hickory. All right. Where would you rather be? where do you think yourself is in a better placement?
Are you asking the listener?
I'm asking you and asking the listener, and neither is the captain a believer in whatever system of belief there is. In Europa, he's just there for the women. And in Lost Cove, he doesn't participate in the abbot's plan. He's just watching it.
I am not a utopian, and don't care to be. Don't even want to flirt with that sort of stuff. And I'm fine with the potato peel, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's better for the captain in the second? If the second case is better than the first, what makes it better?
For him in specific, I don't really know, but I think that a person has a better shot at living out their proper telos in this more unmanaged society there at Lost Cove.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we've got this Jungian Skinner influenced governance system alone, I mean, it's just a nightmare on Europa. And it doesn't have to explicitly be one of those kinds of things, right? If it's not going to be an agrarian sort of small holding thing, society, there's going to be that sort of central management crop up. And whether it's, pick your system, whether it's, B.F. Skinner or Taylorism or whatever, it's coming.
For me, the horror of the first option is that you might be prosperous, but there's no point to any of it. There's no guiding end. There's nothing sacred about it. Yay, I've got my cave on Europa and another encounter meeting to go to. To what end? We could live like this for 1,000,000 years. Great. To what end? What greatness will we do? Where the captain's sitting on his porch looking down at the old monk and one or two of his kids. He's not participating in it, but in Lost Cove, there's people who think that there is a point of it all.
Mm-hmm.
The Baptists would think they know what's going on. The Catholics think they know what's going on. The Jews are still there. There is a vertical dimension to the second option, which there isn't in the first option. At Europa, it's entirely horizontal. And
right.
Even were I an unbeliever, I think I'd rather live in the place where there's some people that think vertically. At least eventually they'll build a cathedral.
Even with all the conflict?
Yes.
Of course. Came to play.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, sure. One of the best times I ever had was my discussion with the Lutheran organist, Missouri Synod. I was singing a wedding for a Lutheran friend, and she was telling me, well, because you're Catholic, you're going to hell. And I thanked her for her concern, and we had a nice conversation. She was speaking from her belief. This is what she thought was true. She wasn't saying, she didn't, flatten it all out and say everything's equal and the same, which would have been disgusting. I'd rather she tell me that. And then I would say, well, I think Luther got it wrong on this, that, and the other thing. And she would say, I appreciate your opinion. And it was honestly a great discussion. Much better than some sort of ecumenical European Aristarchus Jones flattening of everything.
Can't do it.
Ick. Yeah, I have read this book probably 15 times. I'm sorry you don't like it as much as I like it.
Well,
no, it's okay. You don't need to like it.
Move.
It's okay.
He paints this picture of Lost Cove and then Europa. What does that have to do with the self and the theme of the book?
Well, it has to do with how you would place yourself in the universe, in the cosmos.
It has implications about modernity and self, I think.
Yeah, the problem with modernity for me is the flatness of it.
Mm-hmm.
Chesterton says in, I forget which book it was, that ethics begins not out of a social contract. It begins in the presence of the sacred. Whatever that is. That, you shouldn't do this because it's somehow unholy. Well, if you don't have anything that's sacred, then anything goes, but nothing's particularly worth doing.
Yeah.
So I got to have the vertical dimension.
Yeah, I think people need it. Get so tired of this stuff.
Tell me what you're tired of.
Maybe I don't. Like step aside and look at myself. But when I speak on the podcast, I can hear people's arguments against the things that we are saying. And what I could hear right then were all the people that say, oh, okay, well, Lost Cove has set themselves up for all of these conflicts because religion is responsible for all this war and blah, blah, blah. I'm just so tired of all that kind of stuff. And I don't even want to speak to it. It's just dumb. Full stop. It's just dumb. But let me back up. I think what we do here is mostly a good thing. I think we leave the wood pile taller than we found it. And we get emails from people that say we've been helpful. I'm appreciative of those, but the more I kind of think in public like this and publish it, the more I realize that while we may help a few, there is something like 7 billion that we cannot do anything for. Now, if you help somebody, that maybe that's infinitely good. Maybe helping 3 people is actually not much more than helping 1 or 300 or 3,000. But it's just harder for me to do it all the time, Karl, because of that. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I don't know. If it's a good thing to do, you just do it. You don't worry about whether you're going to be there at the harvest.
Well, if it's a good thing, you just do it. But if it's a good thing for 1 million people versus, 4, it's a little easier to roll out of bed and read the book you're not interested in or whatever. In the same old tired arguments that come back that have been refuted, 800 years ago.
Well, you have to manage your time and find things that are worthwhile to you. But still, it's kind of the blue dot thing. Unless we get a big enough market, I guess it's not worth it. The argument from smallness. Yeah. We get a fair amount of listeners that keep listening to this thing. It's pretty good.
Yeah, we do.
We probably beat Rachel Maddow.
Oh, there's no question. Nobody listens. A guy named Nick emailed us, Karl. At the end of the St. Benedict show, I asked about, should we do some long form things, and you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And Nick says, my thoughts on episode publishing in the future. He says, the mainest thing, people have picked that up. That's good. My grandmother would be pleased. The mainest thing is to keep putting them out once a week. I rely on this podcast more than any other. It's the only one that I feel intimately a part of. I imagine you have a narrow but invested listenership, and I count myself as one. I depend on it to balance my mood. That's screwed up, dude. And remind myself that the world is crazy, not me. You, Karl, and we listeners are fellow travelers, surely. And then he says, if you and Karl want to crush some long books that take 4, 6, 8 parts, I don't think we dear listeners will mind at all, as long as we get a podcast once a week.
Well, I appreciate that, Nick. If we're helping you so much, just make sure you buy a T-shirt or something, okay?
Right. Or, just do this somewhere. He says, please keep up the great work and give Karl my best. Hey, Nick gives you his best.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
Yeah. And then we had another cat. I only got a couple of emails on this. Here's one. Let's see. From Kevin. He says, the show loves the weekly regularity. I don't care if you spend 6 hours on one book, but I do enjoy the bite-sized pieces Brett V has been assembling. If you give me 6 hours on a Thursday, I'll devour it in one day and then have nothing but barbell logic reruns to keep me company for 5 weeks. Kevin, a Reformed Protestant from Texas. So does that mean he's like a reformed theologian, or did we reform him away from that?
Right. That's ambiguous.
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to have a clarification there. He says, I thoroughly enjoyed the St. Benedict episodes. My dishwasher is busted, so I've been hand washing everything for the past 3 months. It makes me more conscious of the stuff I choose to use. Yeah. Yeah, so I got a couple of others as well about that, but definitely, Karl, the consensus is that they got to have a show a week. That makes it tough. If we're going to do a big one, that makes it tough, though, because while we're reading that big book, We still have to be putting out weekly it's tough.
We'd have to take the big book and divide it.
Yeah. I want to read the rest of the Shelby Foote books, but when am I going to get that done? I want to read the Gibbons books. Have you read those?
Nope.
Is that on your infinity pile or?
It's on the infinity pile.
Yeah.
They were influential, not just because of what he says about the Roman Empire, but his opinions that I think it drove some later politics. So I think that's probably why it's a big deal to read that book.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to read it for those reasons. And there's a whole lot more that I want to get to as well. I'm kind of doing some of that long form stuff. I've committed stupidly to reading and summarizing St. Thomas's Summa Contra Gentiles on my blog, and there are people that have pledged to read that along with me, and I typically will get. Well, we're going to do it over 2 years, so we'll be doing about 35 chapters a month, and I want to do some of those long form things, but I don't know that I need to do it for the show. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll try to do a good show.
The next time is Joel Salatin.
Yes.
Polyface Micro.
And then we talked about reading the Robert Hutchins, The Great Conversation essay, and then I had a Dewey essay on education that I thought we might cover. I don't know if people want two sort of education chunks in a row. What are you thinking about? You smile. I said Dewey, and you actually smiled. It hurt, I bet.
Well, Dewey's not my favorite person in the world, so it'd be fun.
Me neither.
Yeah. We could do that. And then it's too far ahead for me to think.
Yeah, the Dewey piece is short, Karl. It's, I don't know, 1935. Maybe it's 10 or 12 pages.
I've been diving through Also sprach Zarathustra, which is super fun and weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't read that in a long time. That would be good. See, I need to reread that. How's the guy get to all this stuff?
Just don't sleep.
Right. Nietzsche. I was reading a little bit of Beyond Good and Evil, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
And I highlighted where Nietzsche says, there's a point in the history of society when it becomes so pathologically soft and tender that among other things, it sides even with those who harm it, criminals, and does this quite seriously and honestly. Punishing somehow seems unfair to it, and it is certain that imagining punishment and being supposed to punish hurts it, arouses fear in it. Is it not enough to render him undangerous? Why still punish? Punishing itself is terrible. With this question, herd morality, the morality of timidity, draws its ultimate consequence.
Juicy.
Friedrich. He's a savage. What else, man?
I think that's probably it.
So, I don't jive with the existentialism.
I do. Sorry.
And this also has that sort of mid-century smarty pants book flair that makes the hair stand up. You know what I'm talking about, Karl?
Yeah, but I think that's probably me.
A little bit. Yeah, it's not my gig. But it's really interesting. It's funny. And he's never not smart, Percy.
That's true.
He's never not smart. My dislike for it isn't because it's not thought-provoking or well-wrought, because it is. There you go. Oh, gosh. Well, there's that show. Go listen to the Music and Ideas show. We're going to do some Russian stuff here pretty soon.
Pretty soon. Yeah, I have to do a little more prep on that.
Are you going to talk to your Russian handlers?
Yes.
So that you portray them properly.
Oh, it's just some Russian romantic stuff that I think it's probably going to be more of an introductory show than a deep analysis. It's like, have you listened to Borodin? You need to listen to Borodin.
Yeah.
You know?
The Russians are good. Well, anyway, there's that. You can always email us if you want to weigh in on what you might want to hear. We're going to do whatever, but you might pose a suggestion that we'd be interested in you can email us support@onlinegreatbooks.com, and we'll get that email. And yeah, if there's nothing else, go leave a review wherever you listen. I just recently saw that we have a lot of listeners that listen to us through Podbean. I didn't even know the show was syndicated to Podbean, but it is. So, leave wherever you listen to your shows, go leave a review for us. That's helpful.
And you can go to onlinegreatbooks.com and sign up for the mailing list.
Yeah, that's how we justify doing this thing.
And then maybe you become a member, and then you go to seminars and talk about great books with, well, they'll soon be your friends.
Yeah.
Go make big talk, not small talk.
Yeah, and then I'll get to do the orientation and make 4% of you angry and quit immediately. Immediately. Do you want to hear the parts that make them want to quit, Karl?
I already know the parts that make them want to quit.
Wow. Well, if you're interested in the things that I might say that would make you quit, join. And then when you quit, I'll give you your money back, because that's what we do.
Right. No risk.
Yeah, it's no risk. You can even keep the book.